think at the beginning it was easy and it was fun and lighthearted and something we bonded over. And then when we did come to the place where it was like, hey, I think the Lord's doing something. I think that maybe we should date. And if we date, I don't want to play with your heart. If we date, we're going to get married. Like, if this is the Lord. And again, I don't know that it hit me really until I genuinely felt an overwhelming love for you. And I began to feel like this is my wife. And when I began to feel like you were my wife, I began to feel bad for calling you my wife, because in my eyes, you had been Nathan's wife. Mm-hmm. And I told you at the very beginning, I fell in love with Heather Denny, which was Nathan's last name, not Heather Height, which was your maiden name. And I knew what I was signing up for. I knew what I was falling in love with. And I knew what the Lord had prepared me for. Should I feel bad for wanting to marry her? And am I second pick? Am I second class? Am I ever going to measure up?
Hey, welcome back to the Greater Marriage Podcast. We are the Millers. I'm Heather. This is Dustyn. Everybody say, hey. Hey.
Hello, everyone.
Oh, man. You got to match my energy level today.
Hey.
I'm sipping on a Diet Coke. My energy is a little higher than usual. Speaking of, okay, I just heard something from a doctor, actually. He was talking about Diet Coke and, I guess diet sodas in general. And he said, many studies have shown that people who drink diet soda actually have a higher success rate with weight loss because the diet soda curbs the appetite, so they aren't eating as much in meals. And so the person who was interviewing him said, well, what about all the studies about how, artificial sweeteners are terrible for you? And he said, well, first of all, there's countless artificial sweeteners, so you can't blanket term all of them. Second of all, the tests they're referring to were done on lab rats, and those lab rats were consuming massive amounts of artificial sweeteners.
Yeah.
Nothing in comparison to the one can at 3 p.m. maybe every day.
And it's a mini can. Look at you go.
It's a mini can. Yeah. So I'm just...
Heather's not gigantic. That's just a very small can.
Yeah. I'm just feeling... just encouraged today.
I'd like to see that comparison to those that drink water primarily.
I drink water too. I had a coffee this morning.
You're right.
And
you
then
drink
water.
about as much water as you do Diet Coke, which would be 6 ounces. 7.5 ounces of water
Fluid
a day.
Ounces.
Yeah. I'm not, I can't really speak. I drank about as much black coffee, probably. I'm typically a 1 to 2 cups of black coffee a day. And when I'm really focused, I'll get my 100 ounces of water in, which is like a couple months a year that I'm really focused. Every other day.
Right before you go hike a mountain.
Yes. Every other day I am not that. Speaking of, I would love to talk about what I just got back from.
Yeah.
A little bit. Let's
talk about it.
So, our son Jericho just turned 12. And just being his dad, I read The Intentional Father by a guy named Pastor John Tyson. He's pastor up in New York, Australian guy, wrote an incredible book. He was raising a son and just kind of wanted some structure on how to raise a man of courage and character and accountability. And so he couldn't really find that suited him well. And so he wrote it, and it's called The Intentional Father. And he lays out this thing called the primal path. And it's really intense, to be honest. Probably almost a little too intense from my perspective, or how I feel like I want to disciple our sons. And so, but I took it and I adapted it and I made it my own. And this weekend, Jericho turned 12 on Wednesday, and on Thursday I got to take him, surprise him, and take him to Colorado Springs and climb a mountain together. And so it was very cool. We gave him this handmade. We have a friend named Matt Swaggart who owns a company called Holdfast Gear. They make these incredible leather goods, handmade leather goods. He made a sheath with a mountain on it, and Isaiah 2:3 will go to the mountain of the Lord. He'll teach us his ways. So had this sheath, and he got a pocket knife to put in it, and then we got him a handmade notebook with a letter that you and I wrote to him, and then the verse that we've kind of spoken over our children's lives and how we disciple them is that Jesus grew in wisdom and stature, favor with God and favor with man. So we had that in the back of it. And just cool to be able to give him those gifts and then take him on this trip. It was unbelievable. We got to hike up to this lake. I got to teach him kind of how I pray in a very real and practical way. laid out just kind of step by step how I approach the throne room of God, how I pray in my daily life, the confession that I say over myself and you and each kid, and kind of walked him through my prayer journal. We got to spend time in the Word together. I got to kind of let him go off on his own around this beautiful reservoir on a mountain. I just kind of went to the other side, let him pray for a while on his own. Very, very cool. And then the next day we hiked the back side of Pikes Peak, and even got to hitch a ride at the very end, just that last little mile. He took a spill and busted his knee up a little bit, and so we got to kind of believe God on how to get to the top without having to climb up a bunch of rocks with his busted knee. And so he's good. He's healthy. Everything's great. But man, we had an incredible time with the Lord, incredible father-son bonding time. You got to write him a letter that he read at the top, just telling him how proud you were of him, and just a very, very cool moment as a dad. If you are a dad listening to this, I would encourage you to create one of those moments for your son. In Western culture, we don't really have moments like that.
Like
for
a
girls.
coming of age type.
Yeah, like a coming of age type moment, right? In several different cultures, there's a moment when you become a man, or there's something that you do that makes you a man. And I think that in Western culture, we have a bunch of grown boys, and we don't have very many grown men. And so, because
a lot of what you talked about was, taking him from boyhood to manhood.
Yes, and I wrote him. I wrote him a book. To be honest, I say a book. It was just a few kind of talking points.
Okay, don't let him downplay it. It actually is a really, really cool resource, and I'm in his ear about making a version of that we can put as a resource on our website, greatermarriage.com.
Yeah.
There are resources on there, but I think that you just did such a beautiful job of just building something that really will carry him through, this transition from boyhood to manhood, and is just such a great structure, and gives him something to aim at. And so I think that this is a resource that so many families could benefit from. So be watching for that on greatermarriage.com.
Well, it was totally the Holy Spirit. I had all these talking points that I wanted to talk about, several from Jon Tyson's book, several that I had just kind of prayed through, several that I've, dug up from the Word, that and even just, daily life things, sex and marriage and relationships and temptation and peer pressure and all these things that I wanted to talk about, all of these topics. And so I created a book for him. It was kind of the itinerary for the trip, which was cool, the purpose of the trip, and then it was the roles of a man, the values of a man. It was our family, vision, mission, and culture was in there, all of these talking points that I wanted to cover. And in the back of it, I got to write him a letter and just say, son, I love you. I'm so excited for this journey. You're still a boy, and that's a great thing to be. I want you to be a boy. You're only 12 years old. We're going to spend the next few years as you transition from boyhood to manhood, like you said. And so just a very cool moment as a dad that I wanted to share with our greater family. I mean, if you're a dad and you want that resource, reach out. We will eventually make something available. And I do need to appreciate Jon Tyson for everything that he poured into his book that then inspired me to do this and inspired the book and everything else. And so very, very cool moment for me. Not what this podcast is about today, but just a cool thing I wanted to share. That's all.
Yeah, super cool. I think that is episode worthy in itself, just to be able to dive in. Once we have that resource ready, we will do a deep dive into that, because there is a very intentional structure to it that I think is just so powerful. So in talking just about hard conversations and all of that, in the midst of that, us having our firstborn turn 12 and go through this, bittersweet type transition. It also was a pretty monumental week in my life, because just a couple days after our first son's birthday is the anniversary of my first husband's death. And this last week was 15 years since his passing, which, at times it seems like a whole lifetime ago. And at other times I can remember that day like it was yesterday. So with that, waves of grief come and go, and some years are easier than others. This year, I would say, hit me a little bit harder, I think, for a lot of reasons. 1, 15 is just a pretty big milestone. Yeah. 2, I was feeling emo with our baby turning 12 and going on this coming of age trip and everything. And then 3, just everything that happened with Charlie Kirk at the same time. All of those kind of wrapped up at the same time. And
depending on
a
when you're
heavy
listening
week.
to this, so our son's birthday was on Wednesday, which is the same day that Charlie Kirk was killed. And is that correct? Or was it Thursday? I don't remember. I believe it was Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
And so whatever day it was, again, all of those events were kind of back to back to back,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so unfortunately, that was, that event was plastered everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so as much as I warned you not to get on social media, I think you didn't even mean to see what happened, but did see what happened. And so just kind of a flood of emotion, heavy weekend. And so we got to have a lot of really intentional conversations in our home this weekend, which I think led to us wanting to have an intentional conversation today as well.
Sure. And we're not going to get in today to all the details of, his death and everything, but more specifically, I wanted to talk about a question that had been asked. I openly talk about my first husband and that loss, and we talk about it, how we've navigated things all throughout the year. But I think maybe because, I'll share a post on the anniversary of his death, I think that people are just a little more aware of it around that time. And so with that comes some questions that people ask. And there was a question that came up this last week, and someone asked me how it was for you. How you felt around the anniversary of his death, how you felt even marrying someone who had been widowed before. And so I want to spend a little bit of time today on this episode because I think that there is curiosity out there that people do want to know how you even deal with that. Maybe it's just curiosity. Maybe it's because, one of the partners in your marriage has come from a similar situation, been widowed, or maybe they've come from a divorce type situation or a long-term relationship. I think there's some similarities that can, cross over with that, just going from being so, deeply involved and in love in one relationship and then how to move into the next relationship. And specifically today, what that looks like for the partner on the other side. So let's kind of start there with that question, just a blanket question of how does that make you feel when, maybe I post about my first husband or his death or, anything like that.
Yeah. Whew. It's a loaded question.
It is.
Right? There's a lot that comes with it. And I think that it has probably, I don't want to say changed, but adapted. Change is probably a good word. It's adapted and changed over time. I don't want to spend all of our time on this one question, but I think at the beginning of our relationship, I felt a responsibility to help you navigate some of that trauma and some of that hardship. I think that, I was friends with Nathan when you and I even started talking just as friends. It was kind of a common place where we bonded, is talking about Nathan's life and your life after his passing and what that looks like and how you've navigated some of the grief and the hardship
for those listeners who don't know, Dustyn grew up with my late husband Nathan, and we have pictures of them together at 10th birthday parties. And they spent time together more in probably elementary, middle school years. And then as they got to high school, went to different schools, still were friends, but probably
so went
not.
To church together. We're still good friends.
Didn't see each other as often. Well, that's where I came on scene, and Nathan and I started dating, and we were high school sweethearts. Got married right after. I knew who you were because you were a friend of his, but then we moved right after high school because he was in the Marine Corps. Moved to California, started life there, and you were still, back in St. Louis and then in Tulsa. And so it did feel like there was just this almost like, you had all the memories and the stories and everything with him leading up to one point. And then I kind of picked up there and had the memories and stories moving past that. And so it was a common factor for us to even share stories with each other about, you sharing stories of him as a kid, me sharing stories of him as a young adult. And so it definitely was just an area of healing, between us.
For sure. I don't think we ever planned to fall in love, right?
No.
We never planned this.
I actually said I will never get married again.
Yeah.
I'm going to become the crazy cat lady and have a million cats. And, I don't have a single cat and I'm married. So
Look at us.
Here we are.
I think in the beginning, as we navigated it, it wasn't hard because it didn't really affect me in a sense where I should I should be jealous or insecure about anything, because it was just, we were talking about a friend, and then I started to feel some type of way, and we started to figure out like, oh, maybe there's more than just a connection with Nathan here. We're starting to navigate like feelings and what is this, and we even like kind of stopped talking for a while because we were both, I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for this, if I don't know if I am able to really step into a relationship with you. I don't know that I even want to be viewed as the person who did try to step into a relationship with you, especially after knowing Nathan. Like almost like it would be different if I didn't know him, but since I do, our friends may hate me, like all the things. I don't know that you were anywhere near ready to begin to date or begin to even think about falling in love again. I mean, you had already told God, I'm not doing it. And I felt like the Lord had kind of over and over again told you, I have somebody for you, you're going to be married, but still a hard truth to swallow. And so, I think that you posting it, when we first got together, his flag, you had a spot in your house where his flag was up and several pictures of him. And again, kind of a place where we would sit and laugh and talk and, all the things. And so I think at the beginning it was easy and it was fun and lighthearted and something we bonded over. And then when we did come to the place where it was like, hey, I think the Lord's doing something. I think that maybe we should date. And if we date, I don't want to play with your heart. If we date, we're going to get married. Like if this is the Lord. And so we kind of sought God and felt like, man, this is it. And again, I don't know that it hit me really until I genuinely felt an overwhelming love for you. And I began to feel like this is my wife. And when I began to feel like you were my wife, I began to feel bad for calling you my wife, because in my eyes, you had been Nathan's wife. And I told you at the very beginning, I fell in love with Heather Denny, which was Nathan's last name, not Heather Height, which was your maiden name. And I knew what I was signing up for. I knew what I was falling in love with. And I knew what the Lord had prepared me for. And so I think that if we talk just in stages, kind of moving to that second phase was like, should I feel bad for wanting to marry her? And am I second pick? Am I second class? Am I ever going to measure up? Obviously, when somebody passes, you're never going to go back and revisit hard times or negative things or anything that would bring shame or disrespect to their name. And we make it a point to never, ever do that. And so I think that we wanted to honor and respect Nathan. He was an unbelievable man and all of these things. And so I wanted to make sure that I honored him, and I didn't ever want to come to you and be like, am I doing okay? Am I measuring up? Am I enough? Am I better than him? Am I like things that a normal man I think would think, but things I never wanted to approach or like put you in a position to ever disrespect him or think ill of him. And
yeah, because when someone passes, I mean, of course, we're all imperfect. We all have our flaws. But when someone passes, generally, we don't capitalize on the flaws.
Yeah, of course.
We spend time thinking about all the great things and the great memories. And so in that, I would assume you probably felt like you had to like measure up to this idea of perfection, like this perfect person, like he was painted maybe in your mind, because the enemy is so good at doing this. I'm sure he painted this picture in your mind that, Nathan was perfect, did no wrong, checked all these boxes. And then you had to try and like measure up to that. Yeah. Do you feel like that's a accurate, like I'm trying to remember how you've communicated it to me over the years. For sure. Yeah, I mean, Nathan was hilarious. He was a man of God. He was a Marine. He was your high school sweetheart. And I think that as insecurity began to creep in, I would internalize it because, again, I never wanted to come to you and be like, hey, I don't love it when you talk about Nathan, even though we've had this open correspondence about him for a year or whatever. I never wanted to come to you and make that something that was off limits for you. I always wanted you to feel comfortable
talking about Nathan, talking about your marriage, talking about the grief and the pain. But I can't act like the enemy didn't use that as a foothold in my life for insecurity and jealousy and shame, and telling me you're never going to measure up. No one's ever going to talk about you the way they talk about Nathan. She will always be Nathan's wife. No one will ever see her as your wife. You will always be the other guy. These are thoughts that I genuinely had for years in the beginning of our marriage. And I remember our marriage counselor saying, he was also widowed. Our marriage counselor was, which was unbelievable to be able to do premarital counseling. This is premarital. Premarital counseling with someone who could understand.
Yeah.
Number one, he was a man, so he understood kind of the men's perspective and the role of a man, right? To be the protector and the provider and the pioneer and the strong, like stable one in the relationship. And then to also know what it's like to lose a spouse and remarry. And so I remember him saying, listen, you're never going to think, like, you should never think less of Nathan, but there's going to come a time where you two have been together far longer than even you and Nathan were together, and where your relationship is it's going to be much longer because it was cut so short with Nathan. And there's going to be a time where you meet people who don't know you as that, and who you then you get the opportunity to tell your story because they don't already know your story. And I think that
you're meaning they don't know me as Nathan's wife.
Yes, they didn't know you as Nathan's wife. They didn't know you as a widow. They didn't know you as or didn't know me as like the other guy or the second husband or whatever that is. And so very, very, long 10-minute answer to your question. I think that feeling, how does that make me feel, has come in waves. It has been something that we have bonded over. It has been something that has tried to separate us and create separation between us, I'll say. It has been something that has weighed heavily on me and brought shame to me and made me insecure and jealous. It has been something that has brought questions to me that I never felt like I should ask. In marriage, it has brought feelings in me that I never knew I would feel inside of a marriage. You don't expect, as a young man, especially a young guy wanting to do ministry and going to Bible college. I went to a ring by spring school where everyone's there to get married. And I don't know that I ever really had a meaningful relationship in my life. I never dated anyone for more than maybe 6 months, besides like maybe a girl in junior high. It's like I had never had like a real godly, meaningful relationship where I said, this could be my wife, and so for me to walk that out and then all of a sudden feel guilty about it was a hard thing to navigate. And thank God for his grace, for gracing me to walk through that, and for amazing men in my life, speaking into my life in moments where I was weak, and for you to speak into me, just life and breathe confidence into me, and to say that, I don't want to speak for you, or even say maybe some of the private conversations that we've had. You can speak to that, but there are so many things that you said that just built my confidence to say, you know what, I will say this. I think that you made it very clear that you love Nathan dearly, and that you will always love Nathan dearly, and that he will always hold a special place in your life. But also, you are very thankful for the redemptive story of God, and for the fact that he Romans 8:28 is a core life verse for us, that he has turned all things to good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And you said, you looked at me and said, you are God. You are what God used, not you are God. You are what God used to turn a broken situation into the marriage of my dreams and having children and all these things that I thought had the dreams that you thought died when Nathan passed. God has allowed you to live in being a wife again and being a mom. And I think that you speaking that life back into me, and me being able to go to God and his grace for me, and giving me boldness in those moments to have hard conversations with you, makes it much easier now to just simply celebrate those moments with you and say, man, look what God has done. Would we ever wish that would happen again? Absolutely not. Are there still times where the enemy tries to make me insecure over moments like that? Sure. I can't pretend that I've never had an insecure thoughts in some life-changing moment in my life. Of course, insecurity still rises up in me. But thank God he's given us the relationship where we can have hard and honest conversations. And he has led us to a place where I know how you feel about me, and I know how you feel about the story that God has brought us through and where he's placed us now. And I've seen what God has done, and that is enough for me.
So you mentioned, in the first few years that was, the most difficult. And so I'd love to hear your perspective on, what you did to kind of combat that, what you did to move past those feelings of insecurity. Not that, again, the enemy is not creative. He's just going to try and use the same, trick over and over. But in those years that it was so prevalent, like, how did you move past it? And, I'm just thinking about couples who are in situations like this that, again, even if it's not that death caused this, but maybe it is a divorce type situation or coming from a really serious relationship before, and maybe they're hitting their heads on this comparison idea, or maybe their, spouse is referencing something that happened in another relationship. Like, what would you say to those people to help them move past that and to step into that confidence that you're talking about?
Yeah. For me, it came down to, I had to surrender I had to take every thought captive, 1 Corinthians 10:5. I had to take every thought captive and make it obedient to Christ, because my thoughts led me to a place of brokenness. We talk about, kind of the beginning of our relationship and how it was so hard. Most of that was because my insecurity led me to a breaking point, and it led me into sin. I began to try to seek affirmation elsewhere, and I began to try to use pornography and old habits to kind of band-aid that so that I didn't have to have hard conversations. I could try to feel some sense of security or
false confidence.
Yeah, false confidence. And it just, I tried to get it from ministry. I tried to get it from friends. I tried to get it from every other place to try to feel like I was adequate enough in other areas to make up for the areas that I felt inadequate. And it just simply didn't work. And it led us to a point of hardship and brokenness. And it was really at that kind of rock bottom place that I said, God, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to have these conversations. I don't know how to ask these questions. And babe, I genuinely cared for you, and I genuinely cared for your heart, and I didn't want to hurt you. And in not wanting to hurt you in the form of hard conversations, I hurt you in the form of allowing my insecurity to just rule my life. And I hurt you in a way that I never wanted to. And I think that it would have been much less painful had I not navigated the sin and the trying to seek affirmation from other places and other people and in other areas of my life, and trying to strive for things that didn't ever fill that hole. It would have hurt you much less had I just had the hard conversation and say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. And I'm sorry, because that is painful and hurtful, and I never want you to feel like you can't have honest conversations with me. I just got to lay it on the table. I think that what did it for me was what made that thing break is honesty with you, honesty with myself, and honesty with God.
Yeah.
I came humbly before the throne, and I said, God, I cannot do this on my own. I need you to take this from me. I need you to help me. I need you to give me a clear perspective. I need you to show me that Heather does love me. I need you to show me that I am enough. I need you to show me that our relationship is enough. Our marriage is enough. What you're doing here is worth it. And God did. And there were definitely moments of God saying, hey, my grace is sufficient for you. I'm not going to take this away. I'm going to teach you how to navigate it. And I think that those are some of the most potent areas of our lives and our ministry, are the areas where God allowed us, didn't cause us to navigate hard things, but allowed us to navigate what the enemy was throwing at us, and taught us to overcome. We're overcomers through Christ Jesus. And so in that moment of brokenness, when I was able to go to God and say, God, I need help. And then he led me to scripture and grounded me with men of God in my life that spoke life into me, led you to speak life into me. Those moments of honesty and transparency changed everything for me. And so if I can tell men or women or anyone to do anything, it's to be honest and transparent with yourself, acknowledge what you're feeling, what you're navigating, Be honest with someone else outside of the relationship that can give you a third-party perspective, someone that is full of the Holy Spirit, that is deeply rooted in the Word, someone that you know that you can trust to point you back to the Word. Be honest with God, and then be honest with your spouse as well. And maybe that won't always draw a great reaction from your spouse in the beginning. But as you continue to navigate those things, I do believe, I mean, there's been conversations that were hard where you felt judged and you felt like, maybe it was like, I did make you feel bad for feeling a certain type of way. And it was never my intention, but I just had to let you know how I was feeling. And man, the Lord has so graciously led us through so many seasons of that and so many conversations that our bond and our marriage and the strength that we have and the depth that we have in our relationship, I would not ever trade it for any of the hard conversations that we've had.
Yeah.
Those hard conversations have led us to a place of such depth and clarity in our relationship that I just believe that we are so transparent with one another and honest with one another that it has changed our relationship for the better in such a supernatural way that I would never trade it.
Yeah, same. Well, I think that the best way that I can explain, how you move from loving and losing one spouse to loving another spouse, or maybe not even a spouse, just a relationship that you've been in, I can only explain it similar to how you feel about kids. You have your first baby, and you are just smitten over the moon. You love them so much. And then there comes a point that maybe you decide to have another. And it's like, I mean, how many times have you heard people say, I just don't know how I'm going to love another baby as much as I love this baby, right? Because you just can't even fathom it because you love this first baby so much. And then number two comes along, and it's not that like you have this, bowl of love to give, and you had given 100% of it to your first baby, but now you have to pour half of it out to give to the second baby. And now your first baby only has 50% of it. That's not how it works. Your first baby still gets 100% of your love. And then your second baby also gets 100% of your love. Yeah. And then your third and fourth and so on and so on. And why is that? It's because we serve a God of multiplication, not division. Mm-hmm. He loves to multiply things. And so he has designed us in such an incredible way that our love can be multiplied. And so when going from one relationship that is, has a full bowl of 100% love going to the next, it doesn't discount the first one. It doesn't mean that there's any less to give. Because if we truly seek the Lord and ask him to renew our heart and do what only he can do, like there is 100% to give. Like I wholeheartely can look at you and say, and even on our wedding day, that I was able to give you 100% of my heart. Are there, is there still like a place in my heart for Nathan? Of course. Like, do I still like love and honor and respect the place that he had in my life and the way that he helped me honestly grow from a child? I was 18, a girl into a young woman. Of course there is, but that doesn't mean that I wasn't able to give all of myself to you. And so that is a word of encouragement for anyone who has been in a serious relationship or a marriage prior to the marriage that you are in now. Yeah. You can still be confident in knowing that you can give 100% of yourself to your spouse. And if you're on the receiving side of that your spouse is able to do that. And there doesn't have to be this comparison. There doesn't have to be this feeling of, that you're getting less or that you are second best or whatever, because we do serve a God who, like you said in Romans 8:28, says he works all things together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And so even the hardest of situations, he's going to do what only he can do. Yeah. And he's going to work it into something that is going to be for our benefit.
Yeah, I think of the verse that the love of God is shed abroad in our hearts. The love of God is unconditional. And so there's not the condition of, well, you were married before, so you can't give your entire heart away. Or that, well, you had one child, and so you're not going to have as much love for this child. No. The love of God is shed abroad in my heart. And that love is unconditional.
That's really
and
good.
that love never ends, and it's high and it's low and it's deep and it's wide and it's long. So it covers every area of our life, right? The things that are lofty, the things that are deep and hurt, the things that are wide and which covers a multitude of things. It is long suffering. And so I love that picture of, it doesn't matter what you face, God can still bring. Let that be an encouragement to you if you have lost a loved one, that God can still bring love back into your life. We serve a God of another chance. And so
and another
and another chance and another chance. And so, man, if you're believing for love again, allow God to open your heart and to shed his love abroad in your heart so that you can feel that again. And it will be different, right? The love that you have for me is not greater or less than what you had for Nathan. It is a different kind of love. The life that we live is a different kind of life. The marriage that we have is a different kind of marriage, and that is okay. And so we have to be able to look to God, the author and the finisher of our faith, and say, God, you're going to rewrite my story. You're the author of this story. And so I believe that, like, I trust you. I trust you with the story of my life, and I trust you with what you're doing here. And I trust that you're a good God, and that you didn't cause this, but that you're going to bring something great out of it. And I think that can be the hope that gets you through until he does it, because he will. And he has. In our relationship, in our life, in our marriage, he has brought us through such tough times and through such hard conversations. And he still does it every single day. And I'm so thankful, because we still navigate grief. We still navigate those, hard feelings. We still navigate hard conversations. But man, God has been so good to us. And he's no respecter of persons. If he's done it for us, he'll do it for you. And if he's done it for Heather, if he's redeemed your story, he can redeem anyone's story. If he's redeemed my life, he can redeem anyone's life. And so, man, we are praying and believing for you as our listeners, greater family. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. We love to draw you guys in and just allow you we want to be transparent. We want you guys to know us, know who we are, know what we've been through. We are imperfect. We have walked through hard times, and we believe that it's all for the glory of God, and that we can share this story and hope that it brings you hope. We haven't navigated everything perfectly, but man, God has been good to us, and he has shown us so much grace and mercy, and we're so thankful for it. So thank you so much for joining us today. We love you guys. We are praying for you guys. If you need anything at all, please feel free to reach out. You can go to greatermarriage.com, and you can follow all of our social media platforms on there. You can email us from there. We have downloadable resources for you. There may be one coming for fathers and sons. But man, we just appreciate you spending time with us today. And so go be great.